planet killers. Is there such a thing? I mean, could it be possible? Now, have you seen the film Poseidon? It's without a shadow of a doubt referring to the Anunnaki, the ancient global creation stories of man. Incredible film. I watched it last night, and I'll get into that in just a moment. My personal experiences, research, and intuition has literally brought me here now. Let me give you a few life-changing experiences that I've had personally, just real quick, as a reference point. I told you about a week ago or so about the shamanic experience that I had where I literally felt like Archon food, where I felt like I was inside of some type of demigod or some very powerful entity that was using me as an energy source, as a food source. It was very frightening, one of the most frightening experiences I've ever had, also one of the most fascinating experiences that I've ever had. I've told you about the out-of-body experience I had one time where not only did I fly off planet, but I flew outside of the solar system, and I felt like I actually flew outside of the galaxy because it was about the size, it was like going out bird's eye view. You know, when you watch those films, like, well, I remember seeing about the size of a grapefruit, maybe a little bit bigger, very, like this very warm, positive vibes, very good vibes, very warm. It was like circular and it had this blue aura around it. Well, I've also experienced being in realms that are perceived with geometrical shapes and patterns. When I had an astral projection experience once, which is outside of the real time zone, well, everything was shapes and patterns. It was like riding the waves of shapes and patterns. Yet there were curves on the outside, but on the inside, it was all straight lines. It was all, like imagine the top of a pyramid, imagine straight lines. It was, I remember seeing reds and oranges and yellows. So not only have I experienced out of body phenomena, but also like internal and then outside of the real time zone. Recently, I connected the dots with more sacred geometry and frequency after reading the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Tablet 8 discusses the Dark Brotherhood and the serpents that make pacts with people for power. They hide in the shadows of the straight lines. Now, there's more to it than just a straight line. The best way to avoid their nefarious parasitic fangs is to dwell in circular shapes, where there's infinite location points to dwell. A straight line is finite, and this brings the AI tech interface into mind, which is outside of the organic, outside of the pi infinite. So maybe then we can look at the shapes and frequency form and decide which frequency is of the light and of the dark. Not in a physical sense, but primordial sense. Certain chants, songs, products are the exact opposite of organic and natural order. Most current industries of today are exactly that. They're straight lines filled with vampiric gnomes of disintegration, spark obliterated. Now, for those that follow me here at Leak Project and put up with my strange, eccentric humor, well, first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. And second of all, I do Ozzy Stern podcasts on occasion. And, it's a way to poke fun at some of the trolls out there and some of the silly comments. And it's also just a way to blow off steam. And some people like it. Some people don't. Mixed emotions, I get it. Totally cool. So, with that said, I recently did a podcast where I busted out the Ouija board as a joke. Now, behind me, I had the Anunnaki vinyl scroll that I got from Gerald Clark's website, geraldclark77.com. And if you go to his website, make sure to use the code Leak Project. You'll get a 10% discount. How cool is that? I just threw in a quick plug there, shamelessly, of course. Well, anyway, I had the vinyl scroll behind me, and it's kind of off to the side right now. Then I had the Ouija board, and I was like, what should I do? Should I call it the Anunnaki, or should I ask somebody else a question? And H.R. Giger, I'm a huge fan of his work. His artwork is so far out. I mean, it's just, he's definitely in a class of his own. And his artwork has influenced many Hollywood production films, such as Alien, Aliens, Prometheus. And I would love to one of these days be able to find an actual painting of his, like an original, but I'm sure they're so outlandishly expensive if you can even find them. Heck, just a poster of his that's autographed will cost you $400 or $500. But his work, he'll take. I think that he was channeling other sides and other dimensions, and he was putting it together as best as he could in forms that he could. Well, when I busted out the Ouija board and I asked it a question, it didn't move. It didn't move at all. And I was kind of spooked out doing it. Well, anyway, the thought that came to my mind, I asked the question. I said, all right, I'll call up H.R. Giger and see how he's doing. So the question I asked was, what's it like where he is now? And what piece of art that he created might it compare to? And if you guys saw that podcast, I said Prometheus. So I pretended to move the Ouija board and I said Prometheus. So Prometheus is, or not Prometheus, Poseidon. I'm sorry, Poseidon. So have you guys seen the film Poseidon? Well, if you've seen the film, it's incredible. It's kind of like a comparison to, if you've seen the older Alien series, well, this kind of shows you where the aliens came from. It also shows you where we came from. But it's Poseidon, not Prometheus. And if I said Poseidon I said Poseidon. Okay, just checking my notes. So, anyway, Poseidon. And later on, I realized Enki is the one referenced as Poseidon in scriptures of antiquity from several parts of the world. So, Enki is also the genetic scientist of the Anunnaki discussed in much of the Sumerian history and other cultures. So, last night, I decided to watch the film Poseidon, and voila! In the beginning of the film, it's based on ancient texts from around the world, leading to the same things: the human, the engineers, the Sumerian, the Babylonian, the Egyptians, the Germans, the Irish, even 25,000-year-old Scottish cave paintings were all decoded with the same message, and they had these star charts that all pointed to the same part in the cosmos, far out into the galaxy. So a crew was put together to go off planet and find out what's out there. And the founder of the expedition, this multi-trillionaire, literally trillions of dollars, and the film's based in the future, but not too far in the future. And the founder of the expedition's in a cryogenics chamber, one day away literally from physical death without these mechanical machines keeping him alive. So his daughter's also on the ship, and she's just ready to take over. She's waiting for him to croak. And she mentioned that the crew had spent $1 trillion to do that expedition, or the company had spent $1 trillion to do the expedition with the crew. And there's also an android on the ship, looks like a carbon copy of a German, the epitome of a good-looking German dude, blonde hair, blue eyes, chiseled, speaks multiple languages. And there was a couple things that he said that made you go, whoa. Like one part when one of the crew was kind of giving him a hard time for being an android. And he said, why are you wearing this suit? Because they were going out into outer space. And he said, well, my master created me to look like you. And he goes, oh, you look just like us, or something like that. He goes, oh, he made you to look just like us. And the android goes, not too much, I hope. Made you think, right? Well, wow, he doesn't want to be like a human. And he'd rather be like, he kind of looked at really in the film, it kind of points to the android as being a very superior being because of his abilities, if you watch the film. And that happens in so many movies now. I mean, if we had access to 100% of our DNA, I'll get to that in a minute. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm skipping a couple of steps here. I'm divagating. So, the crew gets together. They wake up from their cryogenics nap 2.5 years into the future, and they're in this star constellation area where there's multiple planets. I think they said there were 7 planets, but only one of them was habitable. And one of the large planets that you can see looks kind of like Saturn because it has a ring around it. And I immediately thought, is that representation of Saturn? And is the beginning here representation of Titan or one of Saturn's moons where they actually went? Maybe it wasn't as far out into the cosmos as they make it look like in the film, but maybe Saturn is the origins of these Anunnaki, these engineers. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about Nibiru and the planet Saturn, and I'm starting to have some thoughts if maybe the Sumerians, when they wrote about Nibiru, maybe if at one point in time one of the moons of Saturn, like Titan or another moon or something, or maybe Saturn itself, could have been Nibiru. Now, once again, that's going way off the deep end there. I don't know what Nibiru was. I certainly don't think it's a planet that comes around every 3,600 years and blows up the Earth. I don't buy that. Or just, causes great destruction. You get my point. But let's go back here. If you look at the beginning of the film, well, one more thing. Another thing that ring could represent is the imprisonment, is the embodiment of a soul, the domination of a life force, because it's around it, it's enclosed around it, it's keeping it in, kind of like the magical circle. If you know much about higher magic, well, you definitely, if you're going to start invoking some entities or start evoking certain things, you want to set yourself up with a magical circle, because if you build it correctly, nothing can penetrate that circle. You are the master of the universe in that circle. Yet, if that circle isn't there, things can get in, and it can, you can literally get taken over by entities. So, and that's another thing I started thinking about, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. He talks about the circular shapes, that's where you want to reside, and not in the straight lines. That was another connection that I thought about possibly. All right, let's go back. In the beginning of the film, Poseidon, one of the engineers, one of the Anunnaki on his planet, drinks some black goo. Now, he's right by the water when he's drinking this black goo. There's this UFO shape, this rod-shaped UFO above him, waiting for him to drink the goo. It's above the cloud line, and he looks up at it, and then he looks at this cup and he drinks it, and it's like the black goo that we hear about, I think. Yet the interesting thing is, maybe people haven't thought about this before in the film. It's kind of a subconscious setup here. Who's in the UFO? Who's in that ship above him watching him drink it? It's almost as if they flew down and they gave it to him to drink, and then they flew off after he drank it, after they knew he was going to drink it, just to make sure he did it, and then they wanted to get the hell out of there. Who are they? Who are the engineers that engineered the alien from the engineer? So, the Anunnaki, the engineer, drinks it. They're giants compared to us, by the way. Extremely well built, bald, they look like a bunch of He-Men walking around with grayish blue skin and no hair. And they look like they can bench press 1,000 pounds. And they're several feet larger than us. And, they're just huge. So, just like in the Sumerian tablets, just like in these Egyptian petroglyphs that show these giant people making little people. Oh, but that's all just symbolic for swamp gas because they were getting high on opiates and stuff, dude. Well, this UFO, this rod-shaped UFO, flies off after he drinks it and after he starts morphing. Well, this black goo, this gray goo, literally what it does is I'm going to go back again. Now, I recently came out with a podcast talking about how NASA discovered with the Cassini satellite, it went through the rings of Saturn, and in between the rings of Saturn, total void. There's nothing there. Those rings are perfect. They're perfect. They're harmonious, and they resonate certain frequencies, and you can actually listen to the sounds of the rings of Saturn, what kind of frequency do they emit. I wonder if it's circular, or I wonder if it's a straight line in a frequency level aspect, like whatever the hertz is, or could that equate to the pattern? Is the pattern circular, or is it a straight line? Now, so with that said, dang it. I lost. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sorry, guys. I got so many things I'm thinking about here. So I even took notes for you to stay on track. So the satellite finds there's nothing in between these rings. And then if you read the book Ring Makers of Saturn, if you see the images of the Hubble telescope in infrared that show what looks like these giant rods that are actually meticulously setting the rings of Saturn to be perfect, and they're in between the rings of Saturn at different times to line up the rings and line up the lines. Well, then I'm thinking to myself, there's a rod-shaped craft above the engineers, and then you get into Greek mythos where it talks about the ancient ones before the Anunnaki and Kronos. And there's been a whole bunch of synchronicities I've been having with Kronos lately. It seems like the universe is just talking to me, because when I start doing certain research on things, like for example, yesterday I was doing research on the cult of Saturn and Kronos, and all of a sudden a song called Grudge from Tool comes on, and I'm like, wait a second, did he just say Saturn? And then I start reading through the lyrics, and Saturn's talked about, and the control networks, and the 1 and the 10, and it's just, you know when the universe is, when you're syncing with certain things, because the universe can talk all around you. Not in your head, but just certain signs that are coming out and presenting themselves to you, you can link with if you know what to look for. Or it's just all a big conspiracy, and like some people say, hey man, you're looking too deep into it. Why don't you do stuff that's really important and go get an online education somewhere? Well, can we do all? Can we just do all that? Why not? I mean, why do I have to settle for one thing? And why do I have to label myself as something? People oftentimes, they say, Rex, are you an agnostic? Rex, are you Gnostic? Rex, are you pagan? Rex, are you Christian? I mean, what's up with the labels? If you put a label on something, doesn't that kind of put you in a box? Words are imprisonment, you guys. I mean, even the way that we communicate has a form of bondage to it, because somebody might think something completely different than what you're even talking about, because they have a different interpretation of what the definition of that word is. Every aspect, I shouldn't say every aspect, but so many different aspects of reality, of what's supposedly real, seems to be tainted and under some type of serpent-like archon control that we don't see with our physical eyes behind the scenes. I'm just saying. I mean, do you think when an ant's getting ready to get stepped on by somebody, do you think it actually sees that person the way that you would see that person stepping on the ant? And do you think that person really cares if he steps on the ant? Most people don't. Some people do. If I see an ant, I'm not going to step on it unless, like, I have to. And I don't know why I'd have to unless if it keeps bugging me or something like that, and I can't get rid of it. Like the other day, I swatted a fly on the air. That was kind of fun. But that thing wouldn't leave me alone. That thing was bugging me. I tried to get rid of it. And the only way was to swat it. So, once again, my question is, who was in that craft that gave the engineer the elixir, infamous gray goo? And then, when this dude literally breaks down into, like, he breaks down all of his DNA, he disintegrates into the water, and then it starts to reform, but it doesn't show what he reforms as. But what it does show is it shows DNA like ours. It shows the DNA actually reconstruct. Then I start thinking of all these Sumerian gods that have the serpents wrapped around them. It's DNA strands. And I'll show you some images here in a minute. Last night, I started zoning out. I was thinking about what it'd be like to travel time and space, looking for our creators. And then once we found our creators, then go find their creators and their creators and their creators and their creators and their creators, literally in perpetuity. And how amazing that would be. It'd be like a constant field trip where you're always out traveling the cosmos and being able to see these incredible nebulas and different planets and star structures. And then you could meet up with some incredible beings that might have completely evolved completely different than us because of their life makeup, the building blocks of their biology. It's just fascinating. It's like beyond Star Trek, you know? It's amazing to think about these things, and why not? Think about it. You got to think about it before it turns into reality. So best way to create reality is at least think about it first, and then once you get that thought, it's out there. It's created at some level. Then what you have to do if you want to get it here in this physical form is you have to learn how to bring that vibrational frequency down to this point. Everything's connected at some level, so just learn how to tap into that frequency and then morph it into your reality, essentially, in layman's terms. And I'm learning this as I speak to you guys. I mean, this is all information that I've been obtaining over the years, and it just seems like for the past few weeks, things have just been clicking. I'll look at I'll look at a sculpture, or I'll look at a carving or an engraving or a petroglyph, or I'll watch a movie, and these just beautiful gems of clandestine knowledge present themselves. They unfold, and things happen at specific times. And when you're resonating in the right place and universe is talking to you, that's when things like this start to happen. That's when you start to meet people that are in the same type of research that you're doing. Like I've talked about before, when I've worked for larger corporations, I worked for a Fortune 100 company for over 7 years. And when I was doing a lot of research into the swine flu, I met people that worked for the CDC that told me how it was all a hoax, because I confronted him on it, and he said, yeah, it's a bunch of BS. I think you're exactly right. So those things present themselves to you when you're on the right path, and to kind of confirm what you're getting into. We look for things to confirm. Like, for example, if you go out and buy a car that you hardly ever saw before, and let's say you go out and buy a 1985 RX-7. They're very hard to find these days. But then all of a sudden, you start seeing them all over the place, or a certain color or something like that, because the mind looks for things that you're thinking about consciously, and the subconscious mind will kind of filter it out to where you'll pick up on that more often. Now, another thing that I wanted to get into is the DNA aspect. You know, if we could live infinite lives, if we could in a physical form, or in a conscious form, maybe not this physical form, but we could take our conscious and transfer it somewhere else to where we remembered everything from the previous life and the previous life and the previous life. So all of our information that we've obtained, instead of that energy essence being sucked up into something else and then recycled, because that's literally what happens. Information is energy, folks. Literally, think about that for a minute. When you learn something, it takes energy to do that. So what happens when your meat sack goes on? Well, as it disintegrates, what happens to the other energies? Where does it go? Well, what about all the people that talk about the tunnel and going to the light and seeing their ancestors, and they're saying, come with me, everything's wonderful. Come to the light with me. Well, then people talk about reincarnation, coming back over and over and over and over again. And is it that, and then they don't remember their previous lives until little bits and pieces when they get hypnotized and stuff, and who knows how much of that is even real. But let's say that reincarnation is real. Why don't we remember our past lives? Is it because it was that bad? Or is it because there's certain energy sources that want to keep us restrained and in these straight lines? They don't want us in a circular motion. They want us staying in these straight lines and being finite, while they can be infinite or attempt to be infinite in a fake reality that they've constructed in these finite lines, where they're bouncing back and forth through these finite lines that they're creating, that they're not creating, that we're creating, that they're feeding off of, because that's how they survive, like parasites. Now, imagine this. Scientists are publicly discussing right now DNA makeup and how it can be genetically triggered to where that life can live in perpetuity, infinite. Recently, I read a study from the University of Columbia where scientists were able to encode large amounts of data. Even a computer virus, they can encode computer viruses into human DNA. Not just viruses now you got to worry about, folks, but also computer viruses that can be encoded in DNA strands. They were able to encode, if you do the math, 200, this is how much information can be stored with 1 gram of DNA. 214,000 terabytes of information can be stored in a single gram of human DNA. Now, if you weigh 150 pounds, that's 9,600 grams of weight. But not all of that is DNA, right? So I did some more research, and this is the estimate I came up to. There was a really good answer from Jonathan P. at Quora.com, and I'm going to share with you right now a picture of DNA. Let's see if I can do this here. All right, here we go. Okay. Now, as I've told you before, we've talked about how I feel DNA is human code, almost like computer code. It's quad code. And here's your quad code right here. Now, if you take the numbers, if you wanted to say, okay, let's take that guy right there that weighs 150 pounds, and we'll turn him into a supercomputer for the Department of Defense DARPA network that we're now working on because he signed for it and he's okay with it. So we'll give him good compensation. We might fry his brain, but he won't remember. And anyway, he's going to get a nice cup of coffee out of the deal and a few $1,000. So, actually, let me change the weight because the weight that this person's doing the numbers on is 141 pounds. That's the average human weight across the globe. Certainly not here in Texas, but around the globe, all the weight, the average is 141 pounds. There's 326 grams, essentially, would be the average weight of each of the quad codes that we're talking about here. So you're looking at, and remember, DNA is two-stranded, so you're looking at approximately 2,600 grams of code. So that 2,600 grams of code is 556,400 petabytes, which is equivalent to 5.56 billion terabytes. You might say, well, my computer's got 200 gigabytes. Well, 200 gigabytes isn't even close to a terabyte, let alone a petabyte. 5.56 billion. And guess what, folks? This is just with current technologies. Just 5 years ago, they couldn't produce 1/300th of the amount of information encoding into one DNA strand like they can now. So they can produce 300 times the amount of information, or encode, I should say, 300 times the amount of information in DNA than they could just 5 years ago. So what does that say about this technology? 5 years from now, it could be 300 times what it is right now, which means DNA, in sense, is infinite. And in essence, when you learn how to actually tap into the system and learn how to see things from a code level, that's the keys to the universe right there. I'm going to read some more to you. Check this out. Look at this dude. All right. Now, I'm thinking of the DNA when I see this. I'm seeing this snake wrap around this lion-headed dude. Looks like 5 times, right? Nope, it's 6. Because if you look by the feet, you're going to see the tail right here. You're going to see the hidden tail, the hidden manipulation that was done to mankind. It's right there towards the feet, ladies and gentlemen. Several people said, there's only 5 strands there, Rex. How does that mean anything compared to your 6 protons, 6 neutrons, 6 electrons theory? I feel that we were genetically manipulated. The 6 protons, the 6 neutrons, the 6 electrons is a carbon atom. Humans are made up of mainly carbon atoms. In the Bible, it even says the mark of man, or the number of man, is 6 threefold, 666. Some people say, oh, that's the devil, that's the demon. Well, I guess in a sense it is, because if we were genetically modified from Enki, some people refer to Enki as Lucifer. So there you go. Everybody's a part of Lucifer if you want to look at it that way. Our DNA's already been manipulated. What's your definition of Lucifer? What's your definition of genetic manipulation? I mean, people are going to come up with all sorts of different stories and scenarios here, but let me show you another very strange anomaly here. See this guy? Remember the bird gods that are shown in Sumerians? Well, this is a picture of what I think is called the Ajiji, the bird people, and this is a Sumerian carving, petroglyph. You'll see these in Egyptian petroglyphs as well, and others from around the world. Well, if you read the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Enki, Enlil, and the Anunnaki Council are talking about how to create man so that they don't have to do as much work, well, they sacrifice one of their councilmen. One of their councilmen is literally used, their DNA is used. Read the Epic of Gilgamesh. There's a great site from the Oxford University where there's 10 different scholars that did the translations of many various Sumerian texts, and it talks about this. Epic of Gilgamesh. I'd strongly recommend it. That's where the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible came from, is the Epic of Gilgamesh. It's like a very watered-down version of it. Well, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, they literally sacrificed one of their councilmen, and a lot of people think it was the Ajiji, the bird people, which were looked at as inferior to the higher council of the Anunnaki. That's very interesting, and I think that that's what this picture is depicting right here. Now, then I started thinking about many of these. This gets even better. Check this out. We'll get back into the DNA here for a minute. You see this right here? This Sumerian petroglyph that shows the Anunnaki. And it shows like there's this interesting tree in the center of these guys, right? And then above the trees is this dude flying around in his spaceship. Well, here's my take on this. This is the DNA right here. This is the flower of life, the DNA that was used to manipulate mankind. And above the DNA is the one that was the head of it all, the master scientist, the engineer, Poseidon, Enki himself, the engineer. And they're all pointing at it saying, look, this is where life came from. Look at this comparison right here to a map of DNA. And then go back here. Isn't that incredible? Hold on a second. Let me see if I can even change this a little bit. So, if you look at these, they look very similar to me. So that's what I think that is right there. I think that's a map. Oh, and I counted up all the flowers around it, and I counted 27. So is there somebody that can connect the dots there for me? Is there 27 chromosomes or 27? What's the magic number there? Why is there 27 flowers around the flower of life, around the DNA strand, the building blocks? So that's my take on this image right here. And, okay, so let me go back here. I was going to bring this up yesterday, and I got so excited talking about other things that I skipped this. I do that a lot, folks, as you probably noticed. I'm listening to some dubstep right now while I'm looking for this. Okay, here we go. What is the key to the universe? How do you unlock things and see it from a primordial level? How do you know what things really are and break out the illusions and see everything around you? Everything. Literally. How do you do it? Well, this is my hypothesis. This is my synopsis. This is my theory. If we learn to observe, analyze, and compute at a DNA level, consciously, then we could and will be able to read everything. Hence, all-knowing, abracadabra, God mind. Then, once we obtain this understanding of the DNA language, breaking the time-space continuum of conundrums and eliminating any misunderstanding of understanding truth, which is the ultimate love. Truth is the ultimate love. Once at this level, you will be able to create matter from thought, because matter is much lower than thought, and this is proven with science and frequency. That's pretty deep. Think about that for a minute. If we could see the building blocks, or have some type of sunglasses, or know a specific harmony, frequency, sound. What about Leto Atreides from Dune? That guy can blow stuff up with sound. They used technology combined with their own bodies and created incredible life extension capabilities with their suits when they were in Dune, as well as defense with their voice and technology that would shoot these lasers that go, Oh, oh. It was awesome when they do it. Oh, oh, oh. And Nanu. Leto Atreides, that guy, I'll tell you, that guy's cool. And on that note, it's funny because when I watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2 the other night and I did my analysis on it, I actually went out to watch the new Alien film that's coming out because I looked up online and it said it started at 10:50 or 10:30 or something. So I'm like, great, let's go see it. So I head on out there with my friend to go watch the film. And we get there, and the guy's like, oh, do you want to watch Alien next week? You want to buy tickets for next week? I'm like, no, I want to watch it now. Oh, are you saying it's not out yet? I'm like, oh, this happened to me one time before. So it's not even out yet, but I did go to see that film. But you know what? I'm sure glad I went because Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was awesome. Chris Pratt is an amazing actor, and I really enjoyed the film. It also spooked me out because at the very end, even after the good guys won, I still felt like there was that dark, archonic influence kind of going, we're still in the shadows and we still control you. You think you have won, but you haven't. It's like they're still in the box. Great film, though. I'd recommend watching it. So I just say, hey, question everything. Absolutely question everything. And here's another thing I want to talk to you about. You know those really cool petroglyphs where you'll see these Egyptians and they'll have on these weird headdresses and you'll be like, why do they have on a headset that's got horns and boxes and weird geometrical shapes, and why are they sitting down in particular positions? Very simple, ladies and gentlemen. I'll answer your question right there. This is the answer to that. They were using those headsets and those specific staffs for resonation, for vibrational frequencies, to harmonize with different energies. Now, read a book by Christopher Dunn called The Giza Power Plant Pyramid Power Plants. These pyramids were made for energy, for free energy. Talk about the ultimate clean energy source in perpetuity. Now, we should start recreating these headsets and these headdresses and start wearing them ourselves, and then go into an area where we can have, something set up at 100 decibels, 102 decibels, or whatever, and have certain frequencies and sounds hit that headset, and just imagine what happened. It'd probably blast you right off. You'd probably go right into an out-of-body experience. Boom! You'd probably start flying around like Silver Surfer style. Like, seriously. Imagine being in the apex of the Great Pyramid in the King's Chamber with one of those headsets on and having a frequency of like 418 hertz or one of the love frequencies just blasting you in the center eye at a very focused point. Boom! Wow. Talk about stargates. And it'd be a lot cooler going through the stargate with your spirit than just your physical body. I mean, that's way above and beyond. That's tapping into God mind right there. That's awesome. That's what those things were used for. And another thing, the pyramids weren't made by huge giants and UFOs. They weren't made by huge giants, well, maybe UFOs, but they weren't made by huge giants going around going, 3, 5, 4, boom. I want to move that block from over here to over here. No, that's not how the pyramids were made. The Great Pyramids were not made that way. They were moved, those giant blocks that were carved and moved. And a lot of this stuff had to have been moved from thousands of miles away, folks. That's another thing a lot of times people don't think about is where did they get all the elements? Where did they get all the stuff to build it? From all over the world. They used frequency weapons. They used frequency technologies. They used sound technologies. These sound technologies can levitate things. They can move things. The frequencies will pick them up. Go, what's the gentleman's name that weighed about 100 pounds and was moving blocks that weighed tons in his backyard in Florida? The Coral Castle. I need to get out there and do a podcast on that. Somebody said they saw him once just moving stuff with his fingers. He was probably going, you. And things are just going, I'm done for the day. And then you've got these giant bulldozers and these giant tractors and stuff that are trying to move these huge blocks that are like failing and stuff, and just bust some sounds. And then you got Mythbusters out there that tried to make that one guy take a dump and crap his pants, and they're like, we couldn't do it because they were putting all that low frequencies into the body, and they had him surrounded by speakers. And so people are going to say, that's debunked, Rex. That's not true. You can't move stuff with sound. You can't hurt people with sound. Oh, wait, well, maybe you can hurt people with sound, like, the new LRADs and stuff like that. Sound is life. Frequency is life. Straight line, round. You choose. I mean, talk about clean, unlimited energy. Imagine what would happen to the control structure if people weren't reliant on gasoline or archaic energy sources. I mean, even solar panels, as cool as they are, that's not anywhere near as efficient as these ancient sound technologies and frequency machines. And I'll bet you they found some of that stuff in the Middle East when they went over there and just blew the crap out of that place and blanketed it in uranium. So imagine that. Imagine having unlimited energy sources without having to pay for it. Imagine having energy in perpetuity that was just free for everybody. What would life be like then? What would technology be like then? What would the environment be like? What amazing inventions would come out of the woodwork? What kind of stuff would people do out of their garage every single day? Or would people still just feel like they want to go home and suck down some diet sodas, eat some TV dinners, knock it out in the microwave, and then veg out for the rest of the day? And then pop a couple cholesterol pills while they're at it because their doctor told them to. And then the doctor told them they want them to take some antidepressants too, because that way they'll feel better about themselves. Man, I feel amazing. I don't even want to imagine what it'd be like to have to take drugs to change the chemicals in my brain to make me feel better about myself. Now, are there people out there that it helps out? Yeah, absolutely. So and I'm certainly not. I'm fortunate enough to not have to worry about having my chemicals being so imbalanced that I'm upset all the time or depressed all the time. Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely an emotional guy. I've got my ups and downs like a lot of people, maybe even more extreme than a lot of people. But I'm certainly happy most of the time. Now, what I wonder is those people that are on antidepressant medications, because I have good friends that are on antidepressant medications. So I'm not trying to come out in the wrong light with this by any means. Is there a way for people that are on antidepressant medications to change their diet, to go through certain counseling modules, to have maybe certain sounds and frequencies and holistic approaches? Are there certain supplements that they can take that could level their chemicals out in their brain and make them feel better that aren't pharmaceuticals? Those are things that I would maybe look into if I was somebody that was on pharmaceutical drugs. And those are options. And we have to realize that not everybody's the same. So once again, I'm not trying to, no disrespect in any way, shape, or form for anybody that is that takes certain, I've got a lot of family actually. I have family members that take certain drugs to keep them from being depressed. So, and they're doing good. So let's move on from that. If we lived in a system that we had free energy, instead of blowing off mountaintops for coal, or burning trees for heat, or ripping the lifeblood out of the earth to pollute the environment and make some oil oligarchs extremely wealthy so they can put that money into more systems to enslave you and glorify themselves. It's called the new world order, ladies and gentlemen. And I choose not to participate in their wicked ways. Oh, sure. I'm still a part of the problem, as I am not producing all my own food, energy, and resources for survival. And these things, too, I will find a way to do. If I can at least give as much as I can take, then I can justify my existence. If I can give more than I can take, or if I give more than I take, then I'm really making a difference. What are you doing today to make a difference? I hope to see you at X-Fest. It's coming up here really soon. Make sure to RSVP. You can either go to terravivos.com, use the code LEAKPROJECT to RSVP, or you can go to guestbookings@leakproject.com. Get in on the ground floor. This is a phase 1 opportunity. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being here with me. Question everything, ladies and gentlemen. Another thing I'd like to let you know about is we do have premium content at leakproject.com. It's exclusive for premium members. It's $10 a month if you want access to this, or it's $50 a year. There's like a 60% discount right now on the yearly membership. Your contributions greatly help Leak Project grow. We'll make it one way or another. One thing that'll help us grow, though, is your contributions. So the more support, the more financial support, the more I can bring to you guys. Whether I need to go get the story on the other side of the country, whether I need to hire somebody on the other side of the world. I put about 12 hours a day or more into Leak Project. Some people think I never sleep. I read some of the comments. They're like, Rex, are you on Adderall? How do you do this? No, I'm not. I've been taking this stuff called colostrum from getthetea.com, and it's amazing. Seriously, it's way better than coffee ever was. But the shows are always free too. Not all of the shows, but we've got over 800 podcasts available on youtube.com/clandestine time lord. So you don't have to pay to get content, folks. And seriously, not everybody can afford it. And if you're going from paycheck to paycheck and you don't got $10 a month, I get it totally. So take the $10 and put it into your gas tank or something. So most of the shows are free. Now, the nice thing is for some people that do want to support the cause, if they're willing to put $10 a month into it or $50 a year, I want to give them a little extra. So thank you guys, seriously. I really appreciate y'all being here with me. Be the change you want to see.